What's up, my dudes? This is going to be the second video in my series of kind of breaking down the bench and hopefully helping people get their bench moving if that's something you struggle with. The first one was building shoulder strength as it pertains to the flat bench. This one's going to be building chest strength as it pertains to the flat bench. Obviously, chest is an integral part to strength and speed off of the chest after the pause. I think this varies more based on your form than the shoulder training does. So the first ones that are going to be good either way, whether you pause with a sink into your chest, pause at a low point and then heave, or whether you pause with a soft touch. The ones that are kind of universally beneficial between the two are long pauses and then sets of higher reps with a competition pause on every single rep. The tendency is to touch and go after you get to X number of reps because you're not getting anything out of it at that point. I disagree. Anecdotally, I found that high rep pause bench is a phenomenal exercise for developing most of all repeated bouts of accelerating off the chest. The ones that come a little bit more down to how you bench is the value of spoto press. I think is going to change based on whether you soft touch or sink. It's going to be beneficial if you sink because it's a very unique, different stimulus. Whereas I'm not sure how beneficial it is if you soft touch anyway. It's just you're pausing at a slightly higher point. I don't know how different that stimulus is, frankly. And then past that, I think one of the ones that I hear a lot about that I just do not buy into myself is dumbbells being a way to build the chest as it pertains to the bench. I think those are good for GPP, preventing imbalance between sides, so on and so forth, handling more volume without beating up your shoulders. I'm not saying they don't have a place. They're wonderful, but they're not a bench variation. I would stick to the spotos, depending, maybe close grip spotos as a slightly different stimulus, also good. And then whether you pause the spotos, also just kind of on a trial basis. But the long pauses and the high rep competition pause work, I think, are the real fundamentals. And then past that, because everybody knows I love accessories, I've found for folks that sink, generally speaking, have a little bit narrower of a grip or a little bit fatter usually, dips, and performed not as a tricep dip, but a little bit more as a chest dip, as I guess a bodybuilder might specify. At the end of the day, they end up being very similar motor patterns. Don't think it matters too much, but I found that dips, focusing on rotating your hands rather than running parallel to slightly turn this way, opening at the chest rather than the shoulders and retracting the shoulder blades, possibly with a pause at the bottom to emulate the bench in that fashion, are a really good way to build that explosive power off your chest. I think most of the people who say they can't do dips without shoulder issues are doing them wrong, and barring anatomical issues, I believe they are absolutely one of the best. Both, I would consider them a bench accessory if taken heavy, or GPP builders if taken for higher reps. I will certainly make a video on dips at some point in the future because I am the biggest dip advocate on planet Earth, apparently. And then for folks who do more of a soft touch, an exercise I've found that I once was listening to an old Chad Wesley Smith video, and he advocated the virtues of just plain old dumbbell pec flies. And I've noticed that's a trend in a lot of Eastern Bloc lifters trainings. They're not very heavy, but they're really deep and stretching out their pec tendon, fully opening at the chest. And a lot of that's just an injury prevention thing. A lot of that's just topping out the chest volume, building strength at end ranges for greater stability so you're less likely to hurt yourself. There's a lot of different reasons for them to be done. And I found if they're performed with a pause at the bottom, tracking similar to how you open your chest for a bench press, they can be very beneficial for people who do a soft touch on their chest. If you cannot execute them properly and you end up getting shoulder issues from them, Josh Bryant is an advocate of doing the dumbbell pec flies on the floor so that way you're symmetrical, your elbow stops on the floor, you maintain the same elbow angle the whole time, and you squeeze your chest at the top, and it makes it less deep, easier on the shoulders, and more regulated as to what is a complete rep. Also have their place. Obviously, Josh Bryant knows probably more about bench pressing than any person you're ever going to listen to. And if you struggle with your bench, I highly suggest you check out Jailhouse Strong on YouTube. And then the last one, that this is only the case if these other things are not already topping out the maximum recoverable volume for your pecs. If you're topped out, you're not really missing out on these. If anything, just trying to push them in there anyway is just going to increase your risk of hurting your pec. I've done that. The more is better, and then you go into training overtrained in a specific muscle, going in a state of acute fatigue drastically increases your risk of injury. But if you're not topped out, and realistically, I could handle more volume. Cable flies in the pec deck certainly have their place. They're kind of pushed out of the way and frowned upon as like a pump and fluff aesthetics bro exercise. Like you're not allowed to do them unless you're wearing a stringer. I think they certainly have their place. And if you observe the training of a lot of high-level benchers, I don't think they give a shit what you think of them. What you think of pec flies as a accessory, because they're often done. And I think the bench does need to be deconstructed more than the other lifts into the individual muscles, the individual components, the individual motor patterns. Hope that helps out. At Sheether on Instagram if you want to contact me, because I don't check the comments on here.